So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Karma Summit India. My name is Nachiket. I'm working currently at the Tata Trust and in the Assessment and Impact Measurement Department. Thank you for joining us today to discuss a topic that is extremely important and relevant, especially as we continue to battle against COVID-19. Today's panel discussion talks about how the Indian private sector has adopted and contributed towards achieving the SDGs, which we have a goal of achieving till 2030. Our esteemed panelists shall deliberate on the challenges, impact, and opportunities for corporates in achieving the SDGs by 2030 in the wake of COVID-19, especially in the Indian context. To get started, I would like to introduce you all to our panelists, starting with Rumi Mallick Mitra, who is the leader for strategy and new initiatives at IBM India, South Asia. Rumi, if you could please share some introduction about yourself in a brief manner.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here. I have been in IBM for about 4 years now. In my current role, I am responsible for initiating new programs for new global programs in India, as well as building strategies to scale and impact. In my previous role at IBM, I was for putting the portfolio of program that can respond to the 2% CSR requirement in the country. A large part of the focus was on skills and education, and I'm very proud to be a part of the team that put together some of our most impactful programs till date, namely the STEM for Girls program and various others. Previously, I have, for the past almost 18 years, I have worked primarily in the confluence between technology and social development, with a lot of work around diversity and inclusion. Most of my work has been in the area of trying to find synergy between the business priorities of companies and their social impact interest and focus areas. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Excited to have you with us today, Rumi. Thank you so much. We are also joined by Sashidhar Vempala, who heads the communications and sustainability for Pernod Ricard India. Sashidhar, if you could please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Nachiket. It's a pleasure to be a part of this panel and more about other than the designation. I look at communications, CSR and sustainability for Pernod Ricard India. My 10th year in Pernod Ricard India, and Ricard India believes in creating shared value, and that's something which I enjoy doing more. We focus a lot on working together with the communities near our 28 units which we have in India, and communities in India have a whole lot of relationship with the families and the units which are there, and that's exactly where we talk about creating shared value. So we will talk more about our programs during the course of the panel. And also being a wildlife photographer and a documentary filmmaker and a conservationist, working with communities is very, very core. Also with communities which are in the fringes of forests and protected areas.
Thank you so much, Sashidhar. Delighted to have you with us. And I've seen some of your photographs and documentaries. They are really exciting.
Thank you. Thank you.
So to start with the panel discussion, now in September 2015, as we all know, the UN General Assembly adopted the 2030 Agenda for SDGs, and it includes 17 goals. It has been widely noted that currently the world is falling behind in its efforts to achieve these SDGs. And the COVID-19 pandemic has increased the gap further by setting us back in our journey towards this achievement. This has presented us with new challenges and has prompted the Indian private sector to rethink their CSR strategies. So at the outset, Rumi, we would like to understand how IBM has adopted the SDGs, and are there any particular SDGs that resonate with your company at a global level and at the Indian context?
Sure. Thank you, Nachiket. So as you're all aware, IBM is a fairly old company. We are 109-year-old today, and we have transformed over the years. But our commitment to global service and sustainability date back to more than 5 decades. And this commitment has been a public commitment for us in terms of aligning to the larger global agendas. And this has also aligned the company towards its responsibility to its stakeholders and the communities that we serve. We do have a very long history of engagement with the communities where we operate, as well as globally societies around the world. Uh, Globally, we do share the priorities of social advancement that is outlined in the 17 SDGs. And we endorse primarily the strategy of partnership that the SDG has called out for. Because, like in our business strategy, we believe that collaboration has to be a critical element in engaging in addressing a large part of the social challenges that are here today. So all our effort, a lot of our IBM's effort towards the SDG goals have been in around the areas of the environmental programs, the supply chain management practices, of course, corporate social responsibility, as well as diversity and inclusion, and in the way we create our products and services, etc. So as a business, we apply technology to a wide range of business and social challenges. And we use our innovation and technology capacities and expertise to also engage around across all the SDGs, 17 SDG goals. For example, we have been using cloud and artificial intelligence and blockchain to devise innovative solutions in healthcare, in education, in agriculture, in environmental conservation, and much more. And we, of course, work very closely with social organizations, government, and as well as our client in creating many of this solution. So at a global level, as a company, we align to all the 17 SDGs across the board in the way that we create our products and services, the supply chain that we manage, how we engage with our stakeholders and clients in our environmental action, in our CSR action. In India specifically, as a multinational, all of these, of course, find their place in the way that we operate in the country. But if I have to see it from a CSR perspective, we are strongly aligned to the SDGs around quality education, gender equality, as well as reducing inequalities. A large part of our programs in CSR, which is also aligned to a very strong shared value creation within the company, really address these challenges at a country level.
Thank you so much, Rumi. This is really helpful. And Sashidhar, coming to you, Pernod Ricard has adopted reporting its CSR programs consistent with the SDGs that they pertain to. Now, how does Pernod Ricard's strategy align with the SDGs? And can you briefly tell us what was the thought process? What were the learnings in doing this exercise? Because it seems as a complex exercise when you're aligning yourself to the SDGs.
Thank you, Nachiket. So Pernod Ricard is a French global leader in wines and spirits, and extremely committed to sustainable production. Because core to our product is grain, and grain is core to farms and communities. And that's exactly why nurturing terroir and responsible consumption and production are one of the core pillars for Pernod Ricard as a group. And that's why, in our commitment to being sustainable in the way we operate, uh, we adopted looking at the SDGs much earlier. And, it's not just in terms of aligning to the SDGs. It was important that we understand how SDGs are reported at a global level, at an India level, how is India a signatory? And that's exactly why with Pernod, we looked at all the SDGs and the indicators which we can impact our communities, and that is why we reported SDG wise last year. Even this year, we're doing the same, and with a very strong belief in creating shared value, and with a campaign which says that we don't want to leave anyone behind, leaving no one behind. Our social impact footprint extends across 24 plant locations, covering 659 villages with 52 programs across 19 states. That's the footprint. And that's mapped across key community transformation programs touching close to 900,000 people in these 19 states. We do target 9 core goals, which is SDG 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 15, and also SDG 9 is core in our incubator, our social impact incubator. And because of the interlinkages of SDGs, of course, you go beyond the 6, beyond the 9 into 6 more. And it was important that we all realized that India was about 112 in the global ranking last year, and we're still slipping. And for corporates in India, it was important for us to align, target, and articulate how the company is contributing to India's progress on the SDGs, and that's exactly what we attempt to do every year. And we also state by target, sub-indicator, focus on the calculation, so that the entire theory of change which we wish to create has this entire SDG outlook ingrained into it. So in the core sectors, we have a program called Water, Agriculture, Livelihood Wall, which aims at fostering water resilience, promoting sustainable production, natural resource management, and securing livelihoods and empowering about 110,000 community members across the states. And of course, healthcare, which is SDG 3, which is a very core SDG for the country itself. We have a healthcare mission to provide access to primary and preventive healthcare at the doorstep of the people who do not have access to it, which is essentially the urban, rural, and the rural India. And we reach about 450,000 people in this. And of course, there are programs in quality education, skilled and diverse workforce focus, and of course, we have an incubator which is helping women get more empowered in contributing to the SDG growth of the country itself as entrepreneurs, as social entrepreneurs.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sashidhar. This is really interesting because the kind of programs that you have and the kind of footprint that Ricard is able to manage, it's very difficult to align with the SDGs, first of all, and stay, uh, you have, sorry, I'll just repeat this, stay aligned to the SDGs and also manage to do it in a very intensive manner, because you are doing doorstep deliveries, you're doing quality education at the community level, and to do it so intensively and to align with the SDGs is very difficult. So thank you so much for detailing it out. So Rumi, coming back to you, to understand, so you said that your organization is aligned to the SDGs, but when you started with this entire process, were there any challenges in communicating the SDGs in your organization and getting all the internal stakeholders aligned to the goals? Do you find that it has somehow permeated through the entire organization, this process of aligning with the SDGs?
So, Nachiket, like I mentioned before, we have been aligned to the idea of being relevant for the world, for the globe, for a long time. So, in terms of an alignment, it is almost akin to the alignment to company value. So, the values that we stand for as a company is trust and responsibility. Hence, all the goals align within the company in the way that we function, and all stakeholders align to those broad goals. So, it very much permeates the organization. It's the way that we operate, it's the way that we work. It aligns, or it sort of goes very well with the culture and the values that we represent, and of course with the strategy and our operating model, and of course it links to the way that we stand as a brand, as well as how we engage with the various stakeholders on ground. So from a communication perspective, even if the communication around SDG reporting is maybe led by environment team or a CSR team, the action on ground is led by all the businesses and functions across the board. So We are a multinational, so we work as a combined effort of our global teams and our local teams across all the functions, whether it is business, whether it is research, environment, CSR, support functions, HR, etc. And because the goals are anyway so huge, and it's of course, as we all know, it's interdependent. So it's not possible for one function to be able to address one goal or a few goals in the way and the scale in which we want to operate. So let me give you a couple of examples here. Um, uh, in terms of services and products, for example, we value innovation and innovation that matters to our company, to our clients, and we often apply our innovation capabilities and expertise to solve large-scale societal and environment problems. In terms of the way that we do things, we help our clients to conserve natural resources, reduce their environmental impacts associated with their operations, help them to make informed decisions to drive improved sustainability. We also globally work with water agencies to monitor and manage environmental stresses. We work with city councils to increase their accuracy of pollution forecasting. We work with property managers to help them conserve energy in buildings, with farmers to improve crop yield and food security. So all of the environmental benefits that results from our investment in this technology and solution perhaps far exceeds the benefit that we as a company are investing in terms of our own environmental impact. And that's the way we see how we impact on ground. So we do align with and make sure that our leadership and in our efforts is able to address across 7 key SDGs, if I can remember, which includes zero hunger, good health and well-being, sustainable cities, climate action, amongst others. If we look at the way that we operate from a technology perspective, the way we have been using our technologies is, for example, blockchain. For example, we have been playing an active role in helping in different organizations work towards food security, in government working towards food security, improve nutrition practices with the use of better data in the food supply chain. Our cognitive solutions have been supporting clinical practitioners in healthcare to have better detection of the health challenges. We have an initiative called the IBM Green Horizon that is also supporting a global shift from fossil fuels to renewable energy. This is over and above what we do as a company in terms of reducing our own footprint, carbon footprint, using more renewable energy. Over 47% of our energy consumption is via renewable energy today. In terms of what we do for workforce diversity and inclusion, these are very much strongly aligned to SDG 5 and SDG 10, which is again progressing women in technology and in careers. We have been one of the founders of the Impact 2030, which is, as you know, a global coalition for private sector collaboration. Now, these are, again, as a business, how we address the need on ground, making sure that all our activities, be it business or beyond, is able to really align and address the UN SDG goals. In terms of the way, as I mentioned, in an environment, I've already given that example, and we report out on all of these parameters as a part of our SDG reporting. In CSR, for example, we use both our talent, technology, and people to be able to solve larger problems on ground, whether it is with education or skills development initiative. And I'll give you more examples when I talk more about what we do in India, as well as the larger focus. A strong alignment and reporting out here is aligned to the parameters that SDG calls for in education, in creating a stronger, sort of pipeline of workforce that are able to cope with the future, to cope with the digital economy. So from coming back to the question that you raised, from a communication perspective, we don't face a challenge as such, because most of our business leaders are strongly aligned to the way we operate aligned to the culture, aligned to the value programs on ground. We also have a strong leadership team that drives most of those actions, whether it is what we do directly with the communities through our CSR effort, or what we do as an environmental function, or how we impact through our product, services, technologies, etc.
Thank you, Rumi. So, just to ask or elaborate on this aspect, I would like to continue on the same aspect. And Rumi, this question is to you. So, leaders across organizations face a dilemma of prioritizing and actively working towards SDGs while continuing to create value for their stakeholders and customers. So, how does one ensure a balance between the two, and how has this transform in your organization?
Sure. So in our sense, there is a strong understanding amongst leaders at IBM that commitment to sustainable development and that position impacts all our stakeholders. So that is given, and it is compatible and it is interdependent. So taking a step back, when we talk about SDGs, we understand that it is about a lack of development in certain areas, whether it is SDG 1, 2, 3, or 4, which means it limits the potential of what you can do in an emerging market. Hence, there are potential risks. So this is understood by most businesses. So addressing this risk makes good business sense. And I think this is the core of that understanding that we have. So when we operate better, we are able to respond to the stakeholders' need better in these regions. We are able to really have a large-scale impact on ground. So in terms of alignment, or in terms of business versus, it's not a versus scenario. So we understand that as a company, we stand to gain if we are working with more resilient communities, if we are if you're working with a educated, healthy population that supports a workforce. So we believe in driving progress towards those outcomes and creating that shared value. And this is how it sort of translates between, across the business. For example, when we look at the CSR function, we help work towards the progress of those identified goals and the relevant issues in each geography. As a single company, we cannot solve all of these problems. So for us, it is necessary to have collaborations as a main enabler for successfully addressing many of these goals that we have taken up, whether it is with the government, civil society, and others. So let me give you an example from our work in education. IBM partners with experts and public and private sector to help people worldwide build skills that are required, the relevancy or may not have a degree. And these skills, because we know in the future 90% of the jobs are going to be. Now, our programs are designed to have a very broad, long-lasting impact to improve access, inclusion, and quality in education. So PTech, for example, or Pathways to Technology, is a global education model that we had initiated more than 8 years ago that focuses on STEM skills building, which is integrating secondary school with college, with workplace experiences. So we have partnerships around the world between educators, industries. More than 500 companies partner with us in this program alone across the globe that then support students with the skills and the degree that is required, skills enhancement that is required. And students are paired with mentors who participate in workplace site visits. There are paid internship, and there is a guaranteed job interview with the industry. So this is a way that we try to create a shared value mode, not only in the way that we use a program called Open PTech, which provides online learning in industry-relevant emerging technology skills and professional development. Now, specifically, this has been designed for students who are in high school and in post-secondary education, because as I mentioned, that not everybody may have an access to a classroom. And in the current scenario, what is most relevant is to make sure that there is a continuity in learning. In fact, during the COVID time, this program called Open PTech was one of the programs that we led to make sure that we can help students across the globe to continue their learning online, to be associated with mentors, to be associated with supporters who can help progress their learning on these technologies. We also have a program called Skills Build, which is global, which is also in India, that partners with the government and reskills people who are looking at entering the workforce. It focuses on veterans, it focuses on refugees, it focuses on adults who have left education and are planning to come back to careers. We offer extensive number of apprenticeship for students across the globe. Across all of these programs, we touch millions of students in globally. So all of these are again very aligned to, as a company, what we stand for. Our biggest resource is our biggest asset is our people. And we look at investing in making sure that the youth of tomorrow is able to have the necessary skills that is required to cope with the future, to make sure that they are able to really get into sustainable livelihood as we move forward with very fast changing economy and technology and the digital workplace that is coming up.
That's really great. I mean, the work and the intensity and the diversity of participants in these programs is really nice. You have a diverse set of people with whom you're working currently, and that's really encouraging for every other organization to understand these programs in detail. Coming to you, Shashidhar, so regarding the stakeholders, so how how can companies, or how has your organization ensure the participation of and collective effort from employees in achieving your company's SDGs? And what footprint or what model would you recommend to other organizations as well?
Sure, Nachiket. So SDGs, as I say, cannot be achieved by corporates or countries. And, by countries, I mean governments itself. What is key is responsible citizenship. That's key towards sustainable behavior, and that needs to be imbibed. And that's exactly where the understanding of the word sustainability itself is very, very important. Uh, Many people today talk about sustainable behaviors, but people do not understand that. SDGs are even further. They do not even understand SDGs. I mean, even if you look at SDG 4, if you look at the Niti Aayog report, it talks of two clear aspects which are needed in the education system today. SDG 4C is about the requirement of skilled teachers. When we talk and work with the Niti Aayog or get to any of the aspirational districts and try and study them, they do not need school buildings, but there are people who build schools there. Even the government officials will ask you for more schools, but that's not the need gap there. The need is for skilled teachers. If you have skilled teachers, you can impart education under a banyan tree also. Okay, so that's the understanding of SDGs. And that's where I come in on employees needing to understand, what sustainability is and what is needed to be done. Because what is needed to be done is not clear to a lot of people. There are campaigns on Save the Tiger. You like a picture on social media, or you share pictures of tigers don't get saved like that. This is the easiest example I could give, and that's exactly why the ecological footprint by each person who's also an employee of a corporate is needed to be understood by them in terms of the damage which they are creating. Statistics say that 94% of the things we buy turns into waste within 6 months. Our daily normal water footprint, we don't know. Many people do not realize that a kilo of meat is upwards of 4,000 liters of water, whereas a kilo of vegetable is less than 100 liters of water. That's a simple comparison. So the food we eat, traceability of foods, many aspects of which are core to the lives of employees, and that's exactly where I say that the sphere of influence for corporates are its employees itself, and of course communities. Communities we can connect with CSR, but employees need to be educated with greater inclusion programs and to make them understand the world of sustainability in the everyday context and also the larger collective context. For example, we have a lot of programs on water, agriculture, livelihood with communities. I think it is important for employees to understand why these programs are being chosen by us, because if you again get back to understanding the India needs state, these communities are living at a disposable income which is below the poverty line, $1.9 a day. Um, the goal is to bring them above the line by giving them skills so that they remain at their base locations, which is the farms and the villages, and do not migrate to cities, which are obviously overburdened. There is not adequate jobs, and that puts a cyclical pressure on everything. So you need to help them get sustainable in their, originated places itself, so that they remain there. And that is where you get into sustainable agriculture practices, which is good for them, good for the planet, lesser pressure on the entire ecosystem. And this is the easiest way I could articulate how employees need to understand. And that's where inclusion, we take all our employees into the programs which we have. They become part of these community management programs. Even our employee volunteering program are not one day programs. If you're working with disabled, it is employees creating a structured intervention, trying to teach them skills so that they become people of value and are employed by organizations basis the skills they acquire with the help of our employees. So that's the kind of inclusion we tell them, and that program also tells them the importance of a particular SDG and the things we do. So that's the approach, and that's the way I think we can get greater inclusion and awareness and adoption of SDGs within the organization at an employee level as well.
Very interesting example, Sashidhar, and that's a really nice thing to know. Now, coming back to the impact of COVID-19, now, because that's a burning issue, and we have been living with COVID-19 for the better part of this year. It has presented several challenges, not just in the healthcare, but employability has been affected, and unemployment rates have risen to almost 24% in India. So, how did the impact of COVID-19 has affected your CSR priorities, and how are you re-examining them? How has your organization adapted to this change? Are there any strategic realignments that need to be done, that you already done, or needed to be done in the future? So, Shashidhar, what coming to you first? What kind of impact did the call to action on COVID-19 have on your company's investment that correspond to the SDGs, if any?
So Nachiket, not much has changed because COVID-19 has forced everyone to relook at the way things were previously being done and find opportunities to overcome this short-term challenge. And I'll call it short-term. And the basic need to deliver towards social impact remained. What was needed was to reconfigure how we were delivering, how we needed to deliver the outcomes which we set out to. What we did or took time rather was only to recalibrate wherever necessary to deliver on the targeted outcomes. Now, what apart from immediate reinstatement of efforts was also to strategize a long-term strategy to mitigate the pandemic impact. If you look at three important things which have happened during the pandemic is the migrant crisis or the loss of livelihoods. A lot of people have lost jobs, and in the future there are certain jobs which are impacted. Healthcare systems. COVID itself has put huge pressure on our healthcare system, and it will have a further impact on the other aspects of healthcare, especially child and senior citizens. Senior citizens are 9% of the population, and 50% of them is poor. And with COVID, a lot of healthcare systems have been impacted. Number three, education. We've been talking about it in the panel. One of the most impacted stages. So livelihoods, healthcare, and education, these particular SDGs related to these three sectors will definitely have a very long-term impact. And that's the COVID effect, which will remain. And it's important that we keep sight of all our planned activities, like our programs with water, agriculture, and livelihood, helping communities to increase their disposable incomes, with sustainable businesses of non businesses in non-timber forest produce, ensure nutrition with vegetable plots, nutrition gardens. All these are sustainable long-term agri-allied programs which cannot have a COVID impact on them. And these are the ways we've always been looking at it, so that you're future ready, and there are no effects of COVID, etc., on your sustainability, or the sustainability of the programs itself. And most of the other programs, skill development, training, all that, have moved on, but from a virtual world aspect, which will still have an impact on the outcome of people getting jobs. So that's an aspect which we do not have a solution as yet, because that's impacted. But COVID per se, we've always looked at looking at long-term, sustainable, outcome-based change creation programs there. So not much has changed for us.
Rumi, coming to you, so what do you think are the most important next steps for Indian corporates to counter this impact? So, for example, Sashidhar mentioned about skills and the employability aspects, which might be a real problem coming, which we will face, everyone will face in the near future. So, what do you think? How do you counter these aspects on the SDGs agenda for 2030? Will this have a severe impact, and how do you counter them?
Sure. So, Nachiket, in addition to what Shashidhar already mentioned, if you look at the COVID period and SDGs or all other broader goals that we work on, the COVID period can be looked at as the coping period, which was February, March, when COVID happened, and we all were shocked, and we were trying to see really how do you cope with current operations, business, and your social impact and environmental impact, etc. The second phase was a continuity. So, you're looking at what are the ways that you can continue doing what you are doing. And then we believe that there is an acceleration phase, which is how do you then innovate to accelerate what you are doing and making sure that they have the necessary impact and continue to have the impact on ground. So these three stages are where I think organizations try to look at various strategies to address and to continue to be committed to the goals that they have set out to do. Business priorities aside, because many businesses, and we have an advantage in terms of a digital business, that it helped to cope very fast, very quickly, transform, innovate, and continue to address the needs of clients and stakeholders. It also created a lot of new opportunities. The same also applied for the way that we were looking at social impact, social and environmental impact, because it did give rise to a lot of opportunities to innovate. And I believe if we have to look at, going forward, what do companies need to do, then one of the important aspect of this is keeping an eye on innovation potential and look at where innovation can play a role in reengineering your current processes to make sure that you're able to cope. I quite agree that we all would like to believe that this is a brief period, and this is a period that will help us create, innovate, and continue to address the larger goals that we have set out to do. This is also the period where you don't, if I have to answer that question again that you asked, Shashidhar, before, which is, did anything change? I would say from a social impact perspective, nothing much changed, because we did align and continue to go forward with our committed goals. So where we had programs, we didn't really have to or didn't need to cut down or say, well, we'll stop doing this and we will now start doing this. We didn't really have to do that. Although a large part of our portfolio included classroom interaction at a deep level. It requires us to have a face-to-face interactions with our users, with our students, with our teachers and others. So we innovated to see how digital platforms and improving access and improving delivery models can help us continue to do what we were doing before, and perhaps even accelerate, because this was an opportunity where you can actually bring in new beneficiaries into the fold and support their progress going forward. The second thing is, what is important is that it is very important to communicate effectively. And I say that because in the COVID period, there was a lot of uncertainty, a lot of, oh God, what's going to happen now? Or what is happening here? Or what are companies doing? What is government doing? It is very important that you are able to really build a very strong internal and external communication to make sure that your stakeholders are aware, whether it is your employees internally, because they're a very important stakeholders that a company stands for, or your clients, or your CSR partners, or the government stakeholders externally. So here, if we want to look at how do we move better, how do we do better, then this is one area that I think companies and everybody needs to continue that focus on, which is having the right communication in place to be able to communicate what we are doing, what is the work, what is the impact, what is the change in the strategy, what is the reengineering, etc., effectively to all stakeholders. And the third, I think, is which I've already mentioned before, which is working. You don't really need to say that I'm depending on the government to solve the challenges, and then we will look at what we can do next. You can't really depend on that. I think the right way to move forward is to constantly look at ways to support, collaborate, and figure out ways where if governments or agencies are facing challenges, where is it that as a business, as a function, you can support them, which then could have a more positive impact on ground. So whether it is your chosen impact areas and SDG areas of work, or in a COVID scenario, we all went beyond that. You see, where is it that with our expertise as an industry, we can help to build stronger systems and processes and platforms in place for the government to work better. So I would say, when we look at what are the things that one can work on, what one can improve on, one can continue to do, in my mind, these are the three top things that everybody, whether it is companies or not-for-profits or all social impact organizations, could look at aligning with or work towards to make sure that it really, a scenario like COVID doesn't really have a negative impact on the SDG goals or the larger development goals that we have all committed to align with and continue to progress.
Thank you so much, because these learnings are going to be useful because we never know what will the future be like. So Sashidhar, just like Rumi highlighted some of the key aspects or some of the key learnings, what their organization has adapted, would you like to highlight some of the key learnings or the key innovations or changes that your organization has already done in the past few months and will continue to do this to improvise upon delivering the programs in the COVID context?
So as I was saying, Nachiket, nothing much has changed. And as Rumi was talking about innovation, I also believe that it's very critical. We also have an incubator, one with Triple IT Hyderabad, and the other one is with the IIM, Calcutta Innovation Park. And both our incubators are focused towards empowering women itself in the social entrepreneurship space. And the tech incubator with Triple IT focuses exclusively on incubating innovation. So that's one start of it. But when we look at learnings, one of the key learnings for all of us would remain that it is very important not to lose focus of the SDGs and the outcomes and the targets we set out for our programs, as well as what the country has set out for. If you look at COVID and the government spending, I think it's got haywire with a large spending getting into healthcare itself for the government, which means there are many other sectors which will be affected. And that's exactly why changing our plans today would be very detrimental in the long term for the SDGs itself. Let's look at plastic pollution. There was a huge buzz on plastic. There was COP24, which happened. We made commitments to it. Today, post-COVID, there is no talk about plastic. Climate change, it's invisible. We are not looking at it at all. And COVID has aggravated the plastic pollution, biomedical waste, and many other things at a far, far serious level. There have been good things which have happened. You look at Earth Overshoot Day, we've got a delay of about a month this year. Okay, that's because during the lockdown there was no carbon footprint. But that's not the only good thing we see. But are there ways and learnings from the lives of our daily lives which we need to retain so that we become more sustainable? That's a question which all of us need to ask and introspect, because there are many good things which have happened in the COVID period at a personal point of view, from a personal point of view, and there are certain behaviors which we need to all imbibe. So I'm answering it on behalf of corporates, but also as an individual, because that has a long-term effect on sustainability itself.
So, Shashidhar, thank you so much. But elaborating on this aspect of sustainability, so there is the vision that organizations have about the SDGs 2030 agenda, and how did you come to this agenda? So, your organization, you said that is focusing on multiple SDGs. How did you prioritize these goals? How did this agenda come into your organization about prioritizing which goals you want to align yourself to?
See, as I talk about our core goals and beyond goals and the interlinkages, SDGs are not something which many organizations really understand. Okay, there are even if you look at GRI, for example, in India has only 150 companies which report on GRI, and that itself talks about from the 100,000 plus companies which are there in India, there is such a small percentage which understands sustainability. Do we need a much larger percentage? Definitely yes. So it's very important for all organizations to look at the future of sustainability and start looking at these aspects on a far serious level. And if you look at the way we need to be focused, aligned, and not let the short term, take our eyes off a long term, it's important that with many aspects, the derailment would have a far-reaching impact on the outcome. And this is where we as an organization are looking at everything, in the same manner. We've got our 4 strong pillars on nurturing terroir, valuing people, circularity, which is circular making, and being responsible hosts and towards responsible consumption. And nothing has changed there. We are just getting into this phase now of trying to accelerate certain targets, because COVID has brought in a temporary gap on achieving some of the targets, and we do not want that to really affect what we set out to do. So there are certain ones which we preponed, okay, like in our business sustainability chains, removing plastic completely from our products, okay, and we are almost at 98% now, okay, and that 2% we achieve it in just 1 more year. We are water positive today. And we are water positive to the tune of 1.6x, and we would become water positive to the tune of 3x by next year itself. And these are accelerated targets post-COVID. I mean, we're trying to accelerate that faster and faster. So the COVID impact we're trying to negate by not taking our eyes off our goals and SDGs, and trying to accelerate as much as possible to undo the harm that COVID has done.
So I think these are not just learnings for any organization, but for any individual, as Sashidhar has been rightly pointing out, because at an individual level also, we need to address these issues, like reducing the plastic is on day-to-day life, must be done at an individual level, and that only will help further enhancing achievement of the SDGs. So Rumi, coming back to you, what do you think is the sort of change we want to drive via the SDGs so that it is irreversible and sustained? So that we sometimes we see a lot of work happening, and then once any organization is out of that geographical area or is not working with that community, sometimes the community goes reverse into the same problems. Those sustainability remains unaddressed, and the community then reverts back to the original state. So how does your organization, or how do you plan to do this so that sustainability is actually occurring in any program that you guys are doing?
Sure. So Nachiket, I'm looking at sustainability from a sustainability as a initiative perspective, which is to do with long-term energy savings and consumption patterns, etc. And how do you make sure that whatever goals that the company has set out for itself, you are able to continue with those goals. So whether it is, for example, in our case, as a environmental sustainability perspective, our larger goals were around energy conservation, use of renewable energy, and CO2 emission and reducing emission. So the goals that we had set out for us as a baseline 5 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, they all continue as such. For example, we are still on our path of renewable energy use, and last year itself, we use 47% of the energy that we use in the company is from renewable sources. In the same way, we continue to focus on our products and solutions, creating such sustainable values for our clients. So, for example, our mainframe systems are when used with power saving energy distribution grids, they're able to conserve more than 20%, 30% of energy, and they're able to save energy. So from a sustainability environmental perspective and from a products and solutions perspective as a company, we continue to be aligned and progress on those goals and make sure that the efforts are sustainable and that they are not derailed. And we continue to progress towards the targets that we have set for us. From the initiatives continuity, which is CSR initiative or environmental initiatives and efforts that we do to impact communities and stakeholders on ground, as I mentioned before, that it takes some innovations to be able to make sure that if you were impacting 2 million youth and students or teachers in 2018, that you continue to have a communication and a channel of work with them. You may not be able to deliver all these set targets, all the targets that you may have set earlier for 2020, but you need to still make sure that there is no big gap in the way that you're progressing with your goals. So one way to continue that sustainability in your programs is, again, in our case, it has been the use of digital platforms and a lot of technology. Again, we work with very students who don't have access in their families. They may have one smartphone that is used by everyone. And when we are talking about education and learning and skills development, it often poses a challenge in how to really reach them. So there are ways and means in which we have looked at over the past few months in establishing a channel of communication so that they can continue to learn, they can continue to grow, they can progress on those learning goals, self-actualization goals that we have set for them. In the same way, when we are looking at students and teachers whom we continue to do deep dives in skills program, we have been trying to make sure that we are able to really still, albeit a small gap and a little slowness, we are still able to continue a larger part of the programs that we had initiated with them. And in our case, again, it has been via digital platforms. So a lot of the work that we did in terms of continuation has been through digital platform, through not-for-profit and partners network on ground to know the communities who are directly in touch with the schools and teachers and colleges and ITIs and various other institutions that we work with, and making sure that this whole reengineering and the change, behavioral change, is able to, we are able to address them more uh, in a more integrated manner, in more comprehensive manner, so that you're not really dropping what you're doing, whether it is in your environmental practices or sustaining your programs, but you're able to set the right goals in a COVID year, and make sure that there is continuity. So if you're moving a goal from this year, you know that this is how you're going to achieve going forward. There's a lot of scenario planning is also necessary for that. So I think it's a combination of all of this: a future focus, scenario planning, innovation, using digital, making sure that you have a holistic model where you're engaging all the relevant partners from a school, from a teacher, from your partners, etc., together to then create that, the future vision or continuity vision that I would say.
Great. That was really nice to understand, and it really helps because it has been largely observed that once you are out of that community, sometimes the communities tend to revert back to the original situation, and that's what we want to prevent. So, Shashidhar, at the onset of this discussion, you mentioned that your organization is already tracking some of the SDGs you're aligned with at a sub-indicator level also, and it's a complex exercise, first of all. So, what were the challenges in doing this, and what will be some key learnings that other organizations in the private sector can adopt to help them also to track at the sub-indicator level or the indicator level for SDGs?
So, Nachiket, one of the core things for us in terms of our journey has been trying to understand where we are, the state of maturity itself, and that I would say is very important for most of the corporates today who have an obligation to do CSR. I'll come to the sustainability part after that. But when we know our state of maturity, it is very important for us to decide on what we want to do as a purpose itself. And that's exactly where we realized that SDGs were one of the best ways to articulate how we as a corporate are contributing to the progress of the country, because the country anyway is getting tracked on how they are progressing on sustainability because of the UN goals itself. So it's a common language of articulation. And that is where for SDGs, it is important for us to get deeper into the targets, look at which targets, you can create an impact. Like we partner with Akshay Patra because we know the number of SDGs which an Akshay Patra will, help you, target very clearly. And there are core and beyond goals in an Akshay Patra program. I spoke about the education and the gender equality coming in. There is health, SDG 3, which definitely gets kicked in, and the government is very focused on it. So there are certain ones which you take as core and you start, tracking them. But I would again say that this self-aware state of maturity is very important for many organizations to get their strategy correct basis the need of the country. And now coming to the sustainability part, this state will also help all organizations will to expedite adoption of the ESG parameters, and that is exactly where sustainability comes in, because today it is seen more as an exercise to boost investor confidence than see it as a business value creation process. Sustainability is not just about saving the planet. It is a business value creation process, and it is about conducting our businesses viably, equitably, and in a socially responsible manner, so that we become highly sustainable, and that, of course, our products and services will be accepted by the consumer and the investor alike. And that is exactly where this entire value chain helps SDGs get ingrained in the DNA of the organization directly or indirectly.
Thank you so much, Shashidhar and Rumi. But I would like to have this discussion going on and understand from both of you. But your insights and views that you shared are too valuable. And I think this will be extremely helpful for the audience and sustainability leaders across the board to chalk out a way forward to prioritize and work towards SDGs through CSR. Because we have to conclude this discussion because of the paucity of time. I'm extremely thankful to you. But just as a last point, I would just like to understand from both of you, what would you like to learn from other organizations, and what do you think Goodera might be able to better share with all the audience as well as with you all? Any one of you can answer first. I'm sorry. So, Rumi, you can go first.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Nachiket, and thank you very much for moderating the session so well and giving us both equal opportunities to express our views and our insights. To the Goodera team, I think I would just congratulate the Goodera team on selecting such a relevant theme for this, co-creating the new normal. And I think the Karma Summit is uh, you know best place to be able to bring together all of us to discuss and to share our thoughts. As an innovation company, we always strive to use our core expertise, competencies in innovation and technology to cope with the new normal and make sure that we continue and to accelerate progress. I am very interested to learn from our peers in other companies and not-for-profits on how they are building, their strategies and their synergies, engaging with both their employees as well as their clients and stakeholders, and then driving action, continue their work to support the communities. So overall, I think I'm quite looking forward to hearing from those various panels, be it the use of technology, collaboration, virtual volunteering, to overall what has been the challenges and how have organizations coped with it. So I see this as a very good, relevant agenda, and I'm looking forward to listening to others on the various panels. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rumi. Shashida, over to you.
Thank you, Nachiket. And, even I would like this conversation to continue because there is a lot of exchange of insights. And thank you for moderating it so well, Nachiket. And thank you to the entire Goodera team for having me here. Coming to what I'm looking for from the session, um, uh, for all businesses, what we do at our core is very, very different. But the purpose for business for society is very, very common. And that's exactly where I would say that, these forums help us harness the power of collaborations because for all of us co-partnering, whether be it for communities or whichever kind of cohorts, it only helps us rebuild, and the need to rebuild and foster resilience is greater than anything else which we have here. And many organizations are doing great work in various fields and creating remarkable impact. Personally for me, I would specifically look for opportunities of creating partnerships with purpose, which I keep saying. And these strong partnerships will definitely have a multiplier effect on the impact. And that's exactly I would look forward to for from this entire summit.
Thank you so much, both of you. And it was really wonderful to have both of you over here. And this 1 hour has been a learning experience, 1.5 hours, whatever it has been a learning experience for me as well. And I take back these learnings to my organization as well.